Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, coach, and mentor, John Opalewski. How are you today, John?
Hey, Jim, I'm doing good. I'm excited about our subject today,
Right on.
entitled The Leader's Need to Pivot. I'm not talking about basketball. I'm not,
Yeah.
I think one of the hardest things for most lead pastors is to learn how to separate work in their personal life.
Right on.
It's an
Yeah.
ongoing challenge. A couple of years after the pandemic, um, a lot of pastors were still reporting burnout
Yeah.
issues, and some of that's the residual effect of the pandemic. But I
Sure.
do think there's some old habits that have reemerged, and one of those is because you know we're seeing a lot of exhaustion in leaders, and I think one of the contributors is this. I don't know how to shut it off enough
Yeah.
so
Right.
that I can be present at home. I can be present and caring for my own soul. I mean, I
Yeah.
know this as a lead pastor and even as the owner of an organization that I have to work super hard to shut work off. And I work out of a home office, so I don't
Yeah.
even have a commute, to help
Right.
me pivot. I
Right.
have to work really, really hard at it. So, Jim, that's what I'd like us to jump into today and talk
Awesome.
about.
Great for pastors, right? Because it's people, and how was your day can be an entire evening's conversation rather than
That's right.
your marriage, your kids, little league, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's kind of the things that we notice as signals that somebody's struggling, leaving work and then re-engaging in their private life. Overscheduling,
Yeah.
overcommitting, rest deprivation, and Jesus gives us this wonderful invitation to pivot in Matthew chapter 11. He
Yeah.
says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened,
Mm.
and I will give you something else."
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Not more burdens. He says,
Yeah.
I'll give you rest. And then he goes further and he says, take my yoke upon you. And I think sometimes pastors, I know I struggled with this. I took on some things, Jim, as a lead pastor that were definitely outside of Jesus' yoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus wasn't putting that on me. Sometimes even people weren't putting that on me. I was doing that to myself.
Yeah.
And we don't have time to unpack how unhealthy that is
Yeah.
today.
But it's a good
Um,
question to ask, right? Like what
it,
what is my assignment and what is somebody else's assignment, and being clear with yourself and others. I
right.
yes, there is a need for that, but that's not what God's called me to do. That's a reasonable answer sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Jesus says, look, if you learn how to grab onto my yoke and shoulder that
Yeah.
and learn from
Yeah.
me, you're going to find rest for your souls, for his
Beautiful.
yoke is easy and his burden is light. Now, um, it's interesting that when we're tired and weary, Jesus says, okay, I want you to stop for a while. Just come to me and plant yourself. Just
Yeah.
stop
Yeah.
uh, and figure out, okay, am I taking on more than you're asking me to do, Lord? Am I shouldering my own yoke? Am I shouldering the expectations of other people? And as I do that, as I spend some time with Him, it's funny what happens that I learn how to work hard without running myself into the ground.
Okay.
Those two are not mutually exclusive. I mean,
Right.
I can work hard and I can work hard at resting.
Yeah.
Um, Working hard, except for a little stretch there as a teenager where, I wanted to sleep in every day and
Yeah.
the thought of holding a job struck terror into my heart. Uh, all of
Yeah.
my adult life, that has not been the issue. The
Mm.
opposite has been the problem,
Right.
learning how to stop, learning how to slow down. And so I think, how do you do that? Like, God's called us into this amazing calling. It's important, it matters. How do I take that and set it aside so that I can focus on the other parts of my life that are very important as well. So, Jim, I want to just toss that out there to you today. And then
Good.
I think I like four things. I think these are just four starter ideas to help our
Right
pastors
on.
and
I love to
friends
hear
learn
them.
how to do it. Okay, so here we go. Um, and this one's right away, I'm gonna annoy some of you. It's clock out at a reasonable time most days.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, I know you have stuff that goes on at night, and I understand that. But it's interesting in Genesis 1:5, it says, and then there was evening, and then there was morning, the first day. And it repeats that five more times, that same line. And it's this sequence that happened every day for 6 days
Yeah.
speaks to this daily stopping and starting points.
Right.
And learning how to pivot is learning how to pay attention to when you're tired. Jim, as a young guy, I didn't have a good governor on that. I didn't have a good sense of that. Man, I'm telling you what, now I know there's like a switch goes off in me, and I realize, okay, I am nearing the end of my productivity today.
Yeah.
And learning how to, when you are legitimately tired after a good work day, you accept that as a
Yeah.
God-given stop signal. You give yourself permission to shut the PC, to put down your phone, and go do something else
Yeah.
that is not related to your calling.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's as simple as that, and it's as complicated as that. Because
Yeah.
if you love what you do for a living, a lot of times it doesn't even feel like work, but we've said this a
Right.
million times. Just because it doesn't feel like work doesn't mean it's not work, and it doesn't mean you're not expending that limited amount of energy
Yeah.
that God has created you on purpose with. So that's the first thing. And Jim, I know this is hard for pastors. Talk to me a little bit. You're still in the fray.
Yeah, no, that thought of I just did this with my campus pastors. We have some campuses, and so I'm trying to teach people that are new to pastoral, senior pastoring, campus ministry, how to. And this is exactly what I said. I said you need upward time with God, you need inward time for your congregation, you need outward time for reaching the community. You need other time because somebody's got to unplug the toilet, somebody's got to mow the grass, somebody's got to make the phone call to the city about the ordinance that you violated. And then I put in waste. I want to see wasted time every day on your schedule, time that is not work related. And we call it
Mm,
waste, but it's not really. I like to put
right.
15 minutes between my hour appointments so I can go get a cup of coffee, so I can talk to the staff real quick. But anything besides the ongoing, work and then the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I'm with you. I think we've done this long enough, you and I both, John, that we know when the yellow light comes on,
That's
we're
right.
not nearly as productive. The red light is coming soon. Well, we're just going to close our computer out of frustration rather than at a logical time and
Yep.
go home not frustrated. So getting up early has become a natural habit for me. My children are grown, but
Right.
I go to bed early. I get up early. I have hours before the rest of the world around me would ever think that it wasn't rude to interrupt me. So you don't text me at 4:30 in the morning saying, how's it going? But you might text me at 10 o'clock in the morning, how's it going? So I want to get all
Yes.
my work done that requires concentration in my best hours, my early hours. And by 3 o'clock, I'm about as useful as, an ice maker in Antarctica. I that's
Yes.
just the reality. But a couple hours of
That's why we don't
relaxing.
record. That's why we don't
Yep.
record
Yeah.
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
It'd just be gray noise with two men staring at the screen drooling. Yeah. So, but I want to give my best to God, and you'll
Yeah,
learn, and it can change, right? My best was at 11 o'clock at night 30 years
that's
ago.
right.
I'm useless at 11 o'clock at night. I remember people saying, let's get together at 5 a.m. I'm like, listen, I can stay up till 5 a.m., but I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. to go kill a deer. There's no way. I'll kill the evening deer. We'll kill the evening deer. So be nice to yourself, be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
But I think this is a brilliant step. Like just be reasonable with yourself.
Yeah. Here's the second one, and that's the fight for your weekly day off. And I want to
Yeah.
emphasize the word fight.
Yeah.
After completing the work of creation, God rested on the seventh day, and we all know He didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
He's got an inexhaustible supply of energy,
Yeah.
but I think He did that to set the tone, to set the pattern for us
Yeah.
humans. And this weekly reset was established right in the beginning, early in the
Right.
book of Genesis, and it's highlighted
Yeah.
throughout the entire Bible. As a matter of
Right.
fact, in Hebrews chapter 4, the writer says, make every effort to enter Sabbath rest. In other words,
Yeah.
you're going to have to fight for Sabbath rest.
Yeah.
And if you really want to get good at pivoting, hitting that weekly reset button of a Sabbath really helps. I want to encourage you, Pastor, protect your day off like your life depends on it, because in many
Yeah.
ways it
Yeah.
does. It does. God put that in place for a reason. And I tell you what, sometimes we think we're smarter than God, we're more spiritual than
Mhm.
God, we know
Yeah.
better than God. Of course, God didn't mean that when he said it, even though
Yeah.
it's all throughout Scripture. Come
Yeah.
on,
Right.
come on. Fight for your day off. Now, are you going to miss a day off some weeks? Yeah, but I would encourage you to think about doubling up the week after,
Mm.
because
Right.
every Sabbath you miss, somewhere down the line,
Yeah.
God's going to get that back.
Yeah.
Jim, I
Yeah.
ignored this up until
Mm.
I fell into the pit of depression. God got every one of his Sabbaths back from me.
Yeah.
And I was in pain during a lot of that.
Right.
So fight for your weekly day off. Stop making excuses. Stop, you're not Superman, you're not Superwoman.
Yeah.
Take a day off, and a real day off. And the prescription God gives us is that should be something that happens on a regular rhythm.
Yeah. There's a paradigm to the kingdom in there. It's very different than the paradigm of the world. And when I first learned the word paradigm, I thought I was talking about 20 cents. I had no idea what the word meant, but that first teaching, they talked about a paradigm being kind of the rules of how things function. And they're talking about
Yeah,
if you fall into water, you should kick, you should move, you should keep that head above water. But if you fall into quicksand, the exact same thing that saves your life in water will shorten your life in quicksand because it's a different paradigm. And I
yeah,
think sometimes coming from the world, we think, well, just work harder or just work smarter, but whatever you do, don't quit working because work is the way you get out of this. I think it's just the opposite in the kingdom. If we don't trust God with exhaustible resources like finances, like time, like relationships, then all we'll have is our own efforts to show, and our own efforts will never accomplish the job. So that
that's
thought of
right.
it, I don't need to rest. Well, you do need to rest, but I feel great. But you won't forever. If you want to continue to feel great, then Sabbath is important. And I think the other thing about
Yeah.
Sabbath is working towards rest is the American way. But if I understand it, they're created. Adam and Eve are created day 6, told to go do everything everywhere, and day 7 is a day of rest. So the marching orders came day 6, but it began with rest. They worked from rest, not
Yeah.
for rest. So even if
I
I'm not
love it.
tired, the work that's going to come out of me in this next week is going to be inspired by a day that has very little in it, a nice walk, a
Hmm.
good meal, some close friends, but nothing that
Yeah,
requires effort. And in expending that and trusting the Lord that what I would have done today by honoring you with this day, you're going to do more than I could have ever done with it if I'd have worked all day. I'm trusting you just like I do with my finances. I'm going to trust you
that's
with my
right.
time. I'm going to give this to you first. And from there, we're going to proceed into a week that is already pre blessed because I've given you the first day. I think that's
That's right.
brilliant.
And
Yeah.
that really leads to the third idea, and that's to walk by faith. Look,
Yeah.
pastoring is a faith venture.
Sure
In
is.
Hebrews 11, we're told that without faith, it's impossible to please God. And it requires faith to pivot from work to your private
Yeah.
life. It means believing that God is minding the store while you're
Yeah.
taking a day off, or you're punching out at a reasonable time at night. It's this idea of the notion that God is still working even when we're not.
Yeah.
And here's the truth. Most likely, the organization you lead won't collapse when you're not there.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it does,
Yeah.
okay, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It
Right.
just means that, hey, I've got some work I got to get done. But look, this is a faith thing from
Yeah.
beginning to last. And
Yes,
so
it
it
is.
requires faith to stop. And God is saying, hey, this is a faith journey I've called you to. And
Yeah.
so walk by faith. Let me give you one more here, Jim.
Yeah.
And this is learn how to play. Some of us have forgotten how to play,
Mm.
how to enjoy life. The older we get, the less I think
Yeah.
we do this well, to have fun,
Yeah.
to laugh.
Mm.
When I was in the middle of the fight of my life during a suicidal depression season, a long season, my
Yeah.
father-in-law, Jim, said, John, you need a healthy distraction in your life. And he was essentially saying, you need to pivot. You can't always be thinking about the mission. You can't always be
Right.
thinking about the people that you're serving.
Yeah.
And at the time he said that, I was an ambitious workaholic lead pastor, the father of four young boys, and I
Yeah.
had no clue
Yeah.
how to pivot from all of that responsibility for moments to catch my breath. And my
Mm.
father-in-law, I mean, I've never forgotten that.
Yeah.
He said it to me once, and they'll never forget it. And so for me, learning how
Mm.
to play is hanging out with guys like you and laughing and
Yeah.
having
Right on.
fun.
Yeah.
Uh, going to play 18 holes of golf, although right now it's, not the season for that here
Yeah.
in Michigan. Going to the lake and watching water, somehow just getting out of that work mode and getting into a spot where all I'm thinking about is what's
Mm.
right in front of me, and what's
Right.
right in front of me has nothing to do with eternity in the
Yeah.
sense of who cares if I get a good score on the golf course or not? Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. So,
Right.
some pastors have told me, John, I don't have time for such trivial pursuits.
Mm.
That sounds noble, but here's the truth. Learning how to play actually helps you be a better pastor.
Sure it does. Yeah.
And pivoting from work to play will actually help you have longevity in your ministry. And I think you'll be more fun to be around, actually,
Yeah.
as well. People
Yeah.
will enjoy you more because you're not cranky because all you're
Yeah.
doing is working. So now, Jim, like some pastors might be listening to this say, why does this matter? Like, why,
Mm.
like you seem like you're out in left field today, John. I really am not. Um,
No.
because here's what I believe that when I don't pivot, the most important people in my life, my spouse, my children, suffer.
Yeah.
I'm at the risk of developing, and you mentioned this, an overinflated sense of importance,
Yeah.
and depression and anxiety are waiting to pounce.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true. When I choose to live that way, my life gets better on multiple levels. My family, my
Yeah.
health, and all sorts of other things just improve when I learn how to do this simple move. And it's simple conceptually, harder to do.
Yeah.
Saying the day's done, work's done. I'm not going to think about work anymore. I'm not going to take my phone, and not going to look at emails after a certain amount of time. It can wait till
Right.
tomorrow. If somebody's in crisis, you know, fine, we'll deal with that. But I
Yeah.
don't have to be reading email at 8 o'clock at night.
Right.
And so, my dear leader friends, please, we want to encourage you to learn this most important leadership
Yeah.
skill, the art of pivoting, because it will allow you to run the long race
Yeah.
that Jesus is calling you to run. He hasn't called you to sprint.
Right.
He's called you to a long distance run.
Can I just say this too, John? That, that what you're talking about, it really is a rhythm that we see Jesus live, even though
Mhm.
the narrative sometimes doesn't seem like that. But when Jesus is in Capernaum and the next story he's in Jerusalem, remember that was a 3 day walk with good
Right.
friends, fresh air, sunshine, campfires, fresh caught fish, fresh made, what we'd call a vacation. But between what happened in Capernaum and what happened
Yeah.
in Jerusalem, there was a journey. So for us to go, well, Jesus never took a day off, that's not true. Jesus took, Jesus enjoyed days and he was serving God as he was enjoying them. He was serving the disciples. He was building the church. We can do the same. So we're not suggesting you take 3 day walks in between every Sunday, but it would do your soul good to remember Jesus didn't work, 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 work. Even though he was always working, some of that work was, it looked a lot more like what we'd call play. He was building the kingdom, even though he wasn't building a house. He was building the
Yeah.
kingdom, even though he wasn't writing a curriculum. He was building the kingdom as he was walking with his disciples, eating that food, enjoying that fresh air and
Yeah.
sunshine. We should do the same.
And I would just say this, that if you really give the Gospels a clear read, an honest read, there
Yeah.
are those moments where Jesus is not accessible.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are looking for him. Nobody knows where he is. And
Yeah.
he's away. He's on a mountain,
Yeah.
praying, spending time with his father, getting away from it. And so if you're ever confused about this, just read the four Gospels, and I think you'll get an
Yeah.
incredible amount of clarity. Let's lead like Jesus did, and if we do it the way he does it, I think we'll be healthier.
Mm.
I think we'll lead better, lead longer. And we'll actually have more fun along the way.
More fun along the way. Yeah. Life's worth living when you can, right?
That's
That's
right.
it's the all creation survives except for us. We're created in the image of God. We get to create, we get to live. John, thank you for this. This is brilliant. And again, if you're listening and you're like, well, I don't know, like if you had any resistance to this, we are talking to you. This was literally probably more for you. And the guy's like, yeah, I already knew that. The guy's like, I disagree with that. Why? You're fighting God. You're fighting the testimony of Jesus. You're fighting the rhythms that he's had for us from the very beginning. You're fighting, and you will lose the fight. So how about we
Mm.
surrender before we lose? If we can help you in any way to establish a healthier pattern, to how do I do that? I have so much to do in so little time. We can help you with that. We do this. It's called coaching, getting you from one position to another position. That like a stage coach. Think about it that way. A coach is someone that helps you, that delivers you from one location to another. If you're unhealthy, then Converge Coaching would love to deliver you from one point to a healthier point, and that's our joy. We wake up in the morning excited about helping people just like you. So if we can help, go to convergecoach.com, and right at the top of that page, click the link, and we'll spend half an hour, one of us or one of our teammates, helping you kind of think through this process. And if from there, there's more work to be done, we'll gladly walk with you through that. So God bless you, our dear watchers and listeners, because this is a juggling act. I realize plates are spinning and some are starting to wobble, and it feels like it's all on you. That's an illusion. Do it God's way. And if a plate breaks, then probably wasn't God's plate to begin with. And we can help you through that. So keep going. It's Tuesday. You haven't quit. We love you. Continue to go as you continue to lead from alignment.